Hello friends, you're with the Lonesome Gamer, and today I want to do a review about Cthulhu Death May Die by Rob Davio and Eric Lang, and published by Cool Mini or Not. So you've probably realized from my playthrough that I did enjoy the game a great deal. But before we go into gameplay, I want to talk about the components a little bit. Overall, component quality is excellent, and that is something you can expect from Cool Mini or Not. They really have a fantastic component quality. I mean, of course, there are the miniatures, and they are sometimes spectacular. I mean, they are some really gigantic miniatures, but also the small ones, you know, they really look beautiful, and yeah, they are just wonderful miniatures. The other components, the tiles, they have a great thickness. The markers feel really good, you know, they have a good texture. The same can be said about the cards. Good thickness, good feeling. The character sheets. There is really basically not a lot you can criticize about the component quality. The dice feel good. One thing I would criticize here is you basically need 2 extra dice. You do not have sufficient of the green dice, so eventually when you roll your dice pool, you have to re-roll a 1 or 2 toward the end of the game when you get more and more dice. So that kind of sucks. 2 more should be sufficient, but yeah, they are just missing. So that, I mean, yeah, not missing, but it would be great to have more. The artwork, well, it's kind of interesting because there are different styles. On the back of these discovery cards, you have basically what you would probably expect from a Cthulhu game. It's similar to Arkham Horror or something, you know, this dark mystical style, which I enjoy a lot, and they look really great. Then you have a much brighter and in a way maybe a cartoony style, and you know, these, when it comes to the investigator pictures. So but also it looks good, I think. We have these which look like kind of paintings or some impressionistic paintings or something. These insanity cards. Again, a pretty unique and interesting style, very different to what yeah, to some of the other components. So, but yeah, I really got to say, it's absolutely, it looks great. I really think they look very, very good. And it kind of matches this, you know, this is about mental insanity. It has this light, maybe a little bit otherworldly style with things that are in your imagination and all that. So the fact that there is a little bit of a different art style makes perfectly sense for me. What I don't like is the monster cards. I think they are a little bit boring. It's hard to distinguish the details here on these monsters. Also here, for example, they look not too exciting, and that also applies to most of the other monsters. Often it's just all brown or all gray, and yeah, it feels it feels really a little boring and generic. So, you know, here Cthulhu, I don't know. I mean, I kind of painted them a little bit different, try to make them a little more exciting, give them a little more contrast. But, okay, that's basically the only criticism I would have about the artwork. One thing, though, that bugs me when I'm playing is that the tiles, which look great in general, but they seem to be a little too small. Sometimes not just a little. You can see here, you know, in this scenario, it's a little bit extreme because you have so many markers here, but you got the fire markers, you got here the relay markers from Cthulhu, you got a gate, and this is just one space here. So you have a single miniature and then tons of markers, and you don't really see any artwork anymore. And now imagine you have a larger miniature here, I don't know, some guy like this. I'm not even bringing Cthulhu in here. You know, you place this guy here, and then maybe, I don't know, a cultist, and then you have maybe, I don't know, and it's ridiculously crowded. And these situations absolutely happen. We had this in the game, and there are sometimes also situations where you have even more creatures in a single space, and that is not good. That can even impact the gameplay. For example, here, in this situation here, you can see here's the door, but you cannot see if there is actually a door on the other side too. And it happened to me that, for example, in a situation like this, where there is a door here, but not on the other side, when this thing was pretty crowded here, like that, and then I had a guy standing here, I don't know, something like this maybe, and I didn't realize that there was no door on the other side, and I thought these two spaces were adjacent. So actually, the fact that there is just maybe a little bit too much going on for the size of the tiles can have an impact on the gameplay. That is not great. On the other side, I can completely understand that they made this decision. This is a fairly small map, and you can already see that large parts of the table are already covered. And if you have larger maps, I mean, if you make the tiles bigger and then you have larger maps, you have an enormous footprint of this game. So you kind of want to avoid that too. So they have to make a compromise somehow. And in other scenarios, it's not that bad. You don't have that many markers in all the scenarios. And there are also some scenarios that don't have that many small rooms, but they have more of these larger rooms. And then it kind of works well. There's not much to say about the rule book. It's a good rule book. I mean, it's a simple game, and yeah, you have a lot of pictures here. It's well explained, and yeah, it's easy to digest. Sometimes with all the special abilities and the insanity cards and whatnot, you might be in a situation where it's a little hard to, where there might be a loophole in the rules or something. But there is a list of erratas here on Board Game Geek for these kind of special cases, and yeah, you can look things up there. thing I wanted to show is the whole storage aspect of this game, and this is really amazing. Usually I don't care about that too much, and storage is basically something that you got to deal with. That you got to find a solution for this, right? And especially if you have multiple expansions, things are getting difficult, and then you have some kind of you have your own box where you kind of store the cards and all, because the boxes that you get when you buy it are simply not enough anymore, and especially if you want to sleeve the cards, then it doesn't fit anymore and whatnot. This is all very different here. This is really, really well done, and you got you got multiple layers of these inlays here, so like that, for example. Oops. So and you have very easy access to all the miniatures, and then you have here, you got all the episodes here from 1 to 6, and of course there are also expansions, and there it works basically the same way. You simply grab an episode and you can, you know, one look and you see what should be in the box, and then you have basically all the components. For example, in this case you have additional fire tokens, and you have the discovery cards, and you have a certain number of mythos cards, and you can simply set up the episode in this way really, really fast. And then you pick one of the old ones. Here we have Cthulhu, then there is also Hastur here, and he also comes with his own mythos cards, and in this case, for example, with relay tokens, and of course these cards up here, and specific monster cards and all. But it's really well done, and it's easy to get back into the box, and it's easy to get on the table, and I really, really appreciate that. And this modular way also gives you a massive replayability. You can just, you know, you pick an episode, pick an old one, and then you get these additional old ones in the expansions, for example. So right now I have 4 old ones and 12 episodes. Now, I mean, this is nearly 50 different combinations, and there will be more if they release the new Kickstarter. So that is really something I absolutely love. This thing here, this sheet, helps you to organize the game. It's really nice. You place the Elder One in here, so the first stage, for example, over here. Then you got your special rules for the scenario. On the back side, you got a setup chart for the scenario, and then you have the specific monsters of the scenario. These are always 2, and you have the cultists and a specific monster for the Elder One, in this case the Star Spawn that comes with Cthulhu. And then up here you have your game track. So this is all really well done. You know, you have everything organized in a perfect way. Now let's talk a bit about theme and gameplay, because that's obviously what is more interesting. The theme, well, there is a bit of a problem here. If you are into Lovecraft's work, then you know that these are not action stories. And there are not some investigators that constantly fight and kill monsters. And it is a ridiculous idea that some guy could fight or even kill one of the Elder Ones. I mean, this is complete nonsense if you stay in the world of Lovecraft's fiction. These are basically gods, and or maybe demigods, and you cannot fight them. So this is, yeah, you might have a problem with that. But there are a lot of Lovecraftian games that take themselves quite serious, and this one doesn't. You know, this game really wants to entertain you, and it wants to give you a wild ride. And if you're willing to accept that, then it really works. Now, there are a lot of things in the gameplay itself that reflect the theme. The whole pace of the game. You come into a house and, you know, there's fire, there are monsters, there are cultists that do some weird rituals, and you're running out of time, and the whole pace of the game reflects that. You know, there is, right from the start, you cannot waste any actions, you cannot waste time. It feels like there is a lot at stake right from the beginning, and there is not a slow build up like in other games where you first, I don't know, you start to buy equipment and all that, and you have a few turns to increase the power of your heroes. This is not really the case here. I mean, you don't have to face Cthulhu right away, but, you know, things escalate pretty quickly, let's say it that way. Another thing that really adds to the theme is this modular nature of the game. Because, for example, the discovery cards, they really match the scenario. It's not like in another game where you, I don't know, you go into the woods and then you find a typewriter or something like that. You know, it really makes sense that the things that you find here in these cards and that the companions that you meet, they match the scenario, obviously, because they are specifically designed for the scenario. And the same thing with the Mythos cards. These are basically events, and you have a lab accident, and there are monsters that are running around in the labs and things like that. These are specific things that make perfect sense in this specific scenario. And also with the Elder One, you have special Mythos cards for the Elder One, and so all these this modular structure adds a lot to the theme, because it doesn't feel random in a bad way. There is a lot of randomness, and I like randomness, but it doesn't feel like there are events that don't really match with the overall scenario or with the overall situation, where you sometimes think you draw an event card and something happens which just makes no sense in that specific situation of the game. And sometimes you have this in games where there is a lot of randomness. But here, this is not happening. Another thing that I like very much is how the story is told. A lot of the story is told, at least for me, by these little flavor texts on the discovery cards. And there is really very little. There is absolutely not much. Sometimes you just meet some student and he mutters in terror about the professor who does crazy experiments, and that's it. And then you find a cage where there is maybe a monkey, for example, and you see some weird drawings on the wall and stuff like that. So you get only these hints. Nobody really spells the whole story out for you. You get all these little hints, and then your imagination starts to paint a bigger picture about what might have going on in this house. And this is actually quite a Lovecraftian way of storytelling. The horrors are often not really described in detail, but you only get all these hints, and then your brain tries to to imagine what actually could have happened. And I think that works really well in board games. And I don't like board games that much that have these massive campaigns where it's all already scripted and exactly in detail explained what is happening. I prefer much this kind of storytelling. Of course, another quite thematic aspect, but absolutely not unique to this game, is a kind of a terror or a sanity loss. You have that in many games, but the way it is done here is really cool. This is combined with this character development, and on the one hand, you kind of have to lose sanity because you can increase the abilities of your characters, and you're getting stronger and stronger and stronger. But then at some point, well, if you're insane, it's over. So it's really a nice balance here. And this brings some really interesting strategic decisions into the game, how to develop your characters. And these characters are really, really amazing. The whole, they get so powerful. And some of these abilities can be so interesting and can be used in ways that it's not that obvious when you play it the first time. I mean, arcane mastery, for example, that is not a big deal. You roll the dice and they simply give you extra successes when you roll a specific symbol. But there are some interesting abilities that you got to try to figure out how to use them to your full advantage, and that's cool. From that, it is just so much fun to see how these investigators develop from pretty weak guys to these extremely powerful beings in a fairly short amount of time. You know, you don't have to play 50 hours or something, but at the start of the game, you basically, if you're lucky, you can maybe kill a cultist with a single attack, while later in the game, at the end of the game, you can blow Cthulhu away with a single attack, maybe if you're lucky. But that happens only if you're really completely on the edge of insanity, and that's the price you have to pay. You get extremely powerful, but you won't be that powerful for long, because either you win or you go insane. And that is just so well done, and it is so satisfying to play with these powerful investigators. It's so much fun to do that. Another thing I really enjoy is that you can never really feel safe in this game. From the beginning, you might have a feeling maybe you have things under control, but I mentioned that earlier, it can really escalate very, very quickly. And, just one or two bad mythos cards and the whole situation is completely different. And there are really some bad surprises sometimes. But on the other hand, it's not pure chaos. You have to make very interesting tactical decisions. What actions do you want to use? Do you want to risk something? Do you want to heal and maybe, just do it a little bit slower? Do you want to spend your stress to do rerolls, or do you want to spend stress to get maybe items? And then, of course, as I mentioned, on the strategic level, how do I develop my investigators? How do I approach the whole scenario? Although the game is pretty simple and there is a lot of chaos and dice rolling, there are still a lot of interesting decisions to make, and you really have to use your resources wisely, because otherwise you will simply lose the game. There are a few things about the gameplay that, well, I would criticize. I wouldn't even say that I don't like them, but you could criticize them. One thing is these sanity cards. They add, they add some special touch to your investigator, and, it might give you, or maybe also reason to play it a little bit different than you usually would. And it also adds maybe some tactical decisions. When do I want to go to that space, or can I avoid to go to that space and maybe wait until I can get some better advantage out of my sanity card. But it also adds a little layer of, well, I would not really say complexity, but it's one more thing that you have to remember. And I'm not sure if the payoff is really worth it. And they also do not really feel all that balanced. The masochism that I had, for example, in my playthrough with the kid was a cool card. And it gave me some advantages, and it was kind of interesting. The kleptomania was just annoying. I never could use it, because in a two-player game, or when you play two characters, you probably want to spread out. Otherwise, I think you are probably just too slow. And then if you have a card, or if you have a mental illness, which basically forces you to, on a regular basis, share your space with another character, it's just annoying. It doesn't help in any way. So, I don't know. I think if these cards would not be in the game, the experience would pretty much be the same. And yeah, I don't think they are that great. But they are not terrible. I mean, it's okay to play with them, and yeah, it's not something that I would complain a lot or something. Another thing that is a bit tough is toward the end of the game, when the old one awakens, basically, then when you disrupted the ritual, then these different stage cards will come into play, one after the other. And this is actually when things can really become a little bit complicated, and when there is a lot to remember. So in general, already when the old one advances, so when this happens here, when this thing goes, this time tracker moves on, you already have quite a few things going on this card here, and also on the specific scenario card. But this is still manageable in a way. Sometimes I tend to forget even these things, but okay, you should be able to remember that. But then in addition to this, you get specific effects that come into play when you reveal these cards. Then there might be effects that happen at the end of each turn, and this adds up. All right, so with the next stage, it also says here at the end of each turn, so you got already 2 at the end of the turn effects. Then you sometimes have effects that are permanent in the game. For example, Hastur, he adds an additional die at some point to all the monsters. And this is also something you have to remember. And so in a game phase, when things are really heating up and You know, this is the climax of the game. You want to kill that guy. There is always a tendency to play a little bit faster, you know, to do the next shot, do the next turn fast because you want to kill that guy, right? There is this urge. But you really have to slow you down because it is so easy to miss specific effects. And yeah, you have all these effects, then you have maybe also these insanity effects, and you are already also at a point where all these are quite advanced, so there is also you have a lot more options here. Of course, you might also have quite a few item and companion cards, which also give you additional options. So especially during this climax, when you want to play fast, there is a lot of stuff to remember. And, you know, is it a criticism that I say? Maybe it is. I just say, slow down a little bit. Try to think of all these cards. Go through them step by step, each stage. Just really try not to forget things. Okay, so let me come here to a conclusion. I love this game. I think it is absolutely fantastic. You know, it might not be the deepest game and the most elegant game, and it is probably not innovative in any way, but they really hit, for me personally, a really sweet spot here. You know, you have the beautiful components, you have a highly thematic story that is told, massive replayability. It's exciting and there's chaos, but there are still a lot of interesting decisions to make. And I gotta say, all that package gives me at the moment maybe the most enjoyable and the most satisfying gaming experience that I have ever had from a game. Okay, so yeah, I guess that's my review. I'm looking very much forward to the Kickstarter, and until then I will do a lot of additional playthroughs of the scenarios that I already have. So if you want to get more of that, check them out. And yeah, hope to see you on the next video. If you want to support the channel, please go to my Patreon page, and bye.